know me, and most of you will not. But I'll tell you what, if you'll walk down that hallway and look at a picture of the church groundbreaking in 1963, that little blonde pigtail girl on the front row is me in 1963. And the little dark-haired girl right beside me that looks like she's about ready to pick a fight is my little sister Debbie. Yeah, she still looks like that, and she'll still pick a fight. And if you go over to where they're shoveling the dirt, there's a little boy with his back turned to the camera because he's more interested in the construction than anything else. And that is my brother David. And there were actually, I think, 2 more of us born at the time. My dad is in the picture, but Mom is not because, she had a newborn and a toddler. And one of my sisters that's here said, do you think Mama was there that day? And I said, I guarantee you she was because my daddy would not have wrangled 3 of us kids by himself. So, she was there somewhere. But just like what Miss Dee was saying, my parents moved to Colleyville in 1960. And thank you, Miss Dee, for reminding me. It was Reverend Shockey that came out to the house and witnessed and led my daddy to Christ. And he joined the church. And we all joined the church then and became a part of the church family in 1960. And so I remember the old wooden church. And I told Brenda Swink over here this morning, I have a picture of me and her. And I want to say there was one of the Mayhans, but they look so much alike, I can't remember which one of the boys it was that was sitting on the steps there in front of the old wooden church. And I remember when they built this church, because all of the men in the church, or this church building, you can build a church and you can build a church building. When they were building the church building, it was mostly dirt roads in Colleyville back then. And so when they had the slab poured, it was the biggest chunk of concrete any of us little kids had ever seen. And so one evening they had an ice cream social when it was just slab and they were starting to frame. And everybody bought their tricycles and their bicycles and their roller skates. And we skated because it was better than any roller rink or bicycle area. There were no sidewalks, it was mostly dirt roads. And so this church became part of our social background very, very early. And the people that we went to church with were the same people we went to school with, and the same people that we dated, and some of us married. And so the people in this church were essential to our spiritual development, and they were essential to our social development. They were essential to our family development. I'm the oldest of 8 kids, and my mother and daddy got to see all of their kids baptized here in this church, with the exception, some of you may remember our little special needs sibling, Carrie, and she didn't need to be baptized. She got to heaven by the grace of God. But all 8 of us were baptized here, and the people in this church were the people that we respected and that raised us as much as our parents did. You were talking about Marge Denning. I'm going to tell you this little story about Marge Denning real quick. Back in the day when Colleyville was all dirt roads, you would only go trick-or-treating to the people that lived on your street or the people that went to your church, because you had to drive a long way. And it was back in the 60s, and so it was like that first LSD scare, people were putting LSD and stuff, So they were telling people, don't eat anything that's not wrapped, da-da-da-da-da. So we went to Marge Denning's and went trick-or-treating, and she had homemade brownies. And she always had something homemade back in those days. So we had homemade brownies, and the first thing we did when we got to the house was, Mama, Miss Denning made these. They are okay. Do not throw them away. We're going to eat these brownies. But that was her thing, was to always do something homemade for Halloween. I think I said Thanksgiving, but it was Halloween. the people that were in the church, the various pastors, the various youth ministers. Thank you, Deborah, for mentoring Brother Jay, because I remember him. Although I graduated in '75, I continued to go to church here, for a while after that. And he led our youth group. And one of our favorite things to do was to go bowling. And he was a terrible bowler, but he was a good youth minister. And he really was a good witness. And several of my brothers and sisters, I'm sure, will probably remember him, very fondly. But over the years, we went through a series of pastors and music ministers and youth ministers, but they all played a part in who we were and the kind of people that we became and the kind of relationship that we had with our Lord Jesus Christ. And so I just want to say thank you to this church, those of you that are still here and still members, and that helped support us back then and continue to support young people and young families today.